All right, so I got cut off from that last video, so I want to continue. You're going to enjoy this book for many, many years because inside this book is a lot of really neat things. You can see here they have a whole lot of information about flight, how planes fly, what is lift, how do planes actually fly through the air. They're going to have things about weather. Weather's so interesting because, and this is something that's worthwhile learning, weather and the study of clouds can teach you what kind of weather's going to come. So by looking at the clouds, you're able to see, will there be rain? Will there be storm clouds? What will the weather look like in 2 days, 3 days, a week? So as an example, if you look at the sky and see a big puffy cloud very low in the sky, well, it's going to be a pretty significant change in weather in the next few hours. Typically, that might mean even thunderstorms. And so you can learn a lot about clouds. If you see very, very, very high wispy clouds, they're called cirrus clouds. And cirrus clouds mean there's a lot of moisture, a lot of water in the very highest part of the sky. And it means the weather is going to change in 3 or 4 days. So if you see those very high wispy clouds, they will typically come a few days before rain does. So weather is very interesting. This tells you a lot more about it. If we continue here, they talk about engines and plane engines, how a jet works. They talk again about flight. They talk about air combat. How do planes dogfight? So in World War II, how did planes fight against one another? And what kind of maneuvers? How do they fly in order to fight in the sky? This book also has a great deal of information about specific planes, and so you can learn a lot about all kinds of aircraft, from helicopters to planes. It's a really, really interesting book. It talks about very different kinds of planes. Like this one here has a what they call a radome. It basically is radar, which means this plane can see all the other planes around it. Basically, it means that this plane, if it were to fly, can see all the other planes. And that's helpful when the military has to see, well, who's around. The book also has a great deal about all sorts of military stuff, but the important thing actually is the survival section. This is pretty cool. So survival information, or how you live in the woods, how you live in the woods if you don't have a tent or a fire. It's very interesting. It's helpful because as you get older, you might find yourself in a situation where you need to make a fire, but there's not the readily available, there's not the fire starter, or maybe even the matches. So this book has big sections that talk about how to make a tent out of things you would find in the woods, how to find food out of the woods. And so it's really, really interesting. The last section talks about a little bit more about survival, how to signal other people, and then it has a big section of acronyms. And so acronyms are letters that stand for something. So you saw my hat that had AOPA, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA. That's an acronym. And so this has many acronyms in the back, which is helpful as you learn more about planes, etc. So, amazing book. This is pretty special. So I hope you enjoy it, and I think it'll last you for many, 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 many years. I'm going to send you 2 more things. The first of which is some Apollo 11 cards. And these are pretty cool. I actually got these when I went to NASA when I was 7. And so you see here all kinds of neat cards about the landings and all sorts of really, really neat cards. And what's kind of cool is this guy right here, Neil Armstrong. I actually have his autograph. And when you look at some of these other folks, they are all different people have had autographs from. So I wrote to all these astronauts and said, hey, I love space. Can you send me a picture? And so that's kind of fun to do. If you ever really like a pilot or an astronaut or anybody, write to them and say, hey, I love you. Send me your picture. Send me an autograph. And most times they will. The other thing I'm going to send you are two, I'll call them bullets, but they're not bullets. They are really lead balls that were used during the Civil War. And these lead balls are kind of special because I actually made these balls. Again, these are just like the balls from the Civil War. The biggest difference is I made them using lead and this mold. Point being, I made the bullets. They look like something. They are something from the Civil War. So they're just another trinket. But at the end of the day, out of all these videos, here's what I would love for you to do. Not now, but in the next 20 years. I want you to read 3 books, if you have a chance. And if not, that's okay too. The first book is called Chuck Yeager, an Autobiography. So Chuck Yeager was a pilot who broke the sound barrier. And what that means is he flew faster than the speed of sound. It's like 700 miles an hour or something. He flew so fast, if he were to talk, he wouldn't hear it. The sound would be behind him. That's how fast he flew. And nobody knew what would happen when you flew faster than sound. And so it was kind of a dangerous thing. But he's what's called a test pilot. So he flies planes that are brand new and could have a lot of things that go wrong. But because he's a good pilot, he can handle it. So Chuck Yeager, an Autobiography, fascinating book. The second book would be fun to read. It's called Moonshot. Now, Moonshot was written by Alan Shepard and Deke Slayton. These two were astronauts, and they were some of the first astronauts. They were part of what was called the Mercury 7. There were 7 astronauts who flew on the first flights. The first flights were on the Mercury rocket, so that's how you have Mercury 7. And what was neat about this book, Moonshot, is it really walks you through all of the history from flight with the Wright brothers all the way through landing on the moon. It's a fascinating book, how the NASA program came about, how astronauts came to be recruited and became fit for flying in space. It's an amazing book, one of my favorites, Moonshot. I think I read it when I was 7 or 8 for the first time. It's a wonderful book. The last book that down the road might be worthwhile reading or have read via is a book called Kon-Tiki, Kontiki. And what's neat about this book, although it's not about planes or space, is it's a book about exploration. And it's a book that was written by 4 archaeologists, 4 people basically, scientists, that believed that people who lived in the islands near Australia, the South Pacific, thought that those people near Australia actually traveled there across the Pacific Ocean, a huge ocean from South America. So they thought that thousands of years ago, people got on boats and sailed thousands of miles. At the time, these scientists, nobody believed them. They didn't think it was possible. But they actually built a boat themselves, and these few guys who had no experience sailing sailed all the way, halfway around the world. And so it's a fascinating book because it teaches you all about exploration, and it teaches you a lot about history and really gives you a good understanding of people exploring the world. So, in the end, I'm going to send you all these things. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope you can learn some new things. Keep exploring, keep asking a lot of questions, and hopefully when you pass back through here, I look forward to hanging out with you again. And if I get down to Washington, I look forward to seeing you then. So, if I find anything else interesting, I'll send them to you. But in the meantime, you guys take care. It was so great seeing you, and enjoy the stuff I said. Bye.